Majority of Canadians saying our country should boycott the upcoming Beijing Winter Games next year. A new poll for the Nanos survey group showing more than 6 in 10 Canadians support or somewhat support Canada boycotting those Beijing Games. Canadians Michael Kovrig, Michael Spavor have been detained in China without cause for the last 2.5 years. Gordon Holden is standing by. He is the director of the China Institute at the University of Alberta. Gordon, good to see you today on this Monday. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Todd.
So these Olympics are coming, and they're coming fast. Your read on what Canada should do here and the possibility of a boycott?
Well, I think there's different types of boycott. Of course, it's coming up very quickly. Back in February, there was a resolution in the House of Commons, I think some 266 in favor and no one against, to ask the International Olympic Committee to move the Olympics to somewhere else. Well, that ship has sailed. It's too late in the game to have Olympics in early 2022 in a different venue. The question now is, should there be a boycott? One type of boycott would be a diplomatic boycott, which would simply mean that there would be no high-level officials, governmental representatives present, but the athletes would still compete. The other sort would be a complete boycott where none of the athletes would show up. And that's complicated. As you said, it would appear that a majority of Canadians support or somewhat support that stance. However, when you have power in Winter Olympics, hundreds of athletes who spent 4 years in preparation for that event, that's a heavy cost, heavy burden to ask them to support.
Yeah, well said. Canada is a Winter Olympics country. We certainly know that. And I have heard the term, Gordon, genocide Olympics used when it comes to these games because of what's going on in Xinjiang in China with the Uyghurs, but also the crackdown in Hong Kong, threats against Taiwan, ongoing oppression in Tibet as well. Your read on how these games might play out? Well,
Beijing is not going to be isn't a popular choice in the West, to be sure. Whether it's our two Michaels, whether it's Hong Kong or Xinjiang, there's a long litany of complaints that the Western countries have, some more than others, but in general, the view in Western countries is contrary, is critical of China. It's not true of the whole world, but it's certainly true of the West. What will be interesting to see is what are our allies doing. As a former diplomat, it's sometimes problematical if you're a boycott of one. It's another thing if you have, as we said in the business, good company. The United States' position will be key. I will not be surprised to see potentially a diplomatic boycott by the United States, something we might join in. But an entire boycott, the U.S. Biden administration so far has been wary of that sort of declaration. Their views may change, but to be alone, even with good cause, would be perhaps to isolate ourselves to some extent.
Interestingly, as you know, many countries backed out of the running to host these games, Winter Games 2022. In the end, it was only China or Kazakhstan, and eventually it did go to Beijing. What do you think we might see from the Chinese government? They must know they're under a microscope, including, of course, how they handled the beginnings of COVID-19, whether there will be any sort of flexibility by the Chinese regime.
Well, I think I'd answer that yes and no. I think that China will be on its best behavior in terms of new actions or decisions or things they might do that would exacerbate the question of participation in their Olympics. On the other hand, their views on Taiwan, on Hong Kong, on Xinjiang are fixed and solidified. They're not going to fundamentally change the human rights situation in China, even for the Olympics. So I think you may see minor shifts, or more likely simply the avoidance of doing things that would inflame relationships with Western countries before next February. But I don't think that this great supertanker that is China is going to shift its direction by more than a couple degrees.
Do you think if those two men, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, remain imprisoned against their will by the Chinese, Gordon, that Canada should boycott these games?
It's a very difficult question. I have a feeling that our boycott or non-boycott would not make a substantive change in the position of the two Michaels. I fear that their fate is largely linked to that of Meng Wanzhou, the Huawei executive. I can see a possibility for a diplomatic boycott if the United States and others go that route, although the government of Canada has not yet made any declaration to that effect. I would be personally surprised to see a total boycott, which would really harm the interests of all of our winter athletes who are ready for Beijing. It is a shame that more countries did not come forward. The countries are shy about hosting the Olympics now because of a variety of reasons, mainly financial. Beijing has the financial clout, and they're showing that. But I suspect our athletes will be there next February. The question of whether there'll be any accompanying officials is quite another matter.
Gordon Holden is the director of the China Institute at the University of Alberta. He's in Edmonton today. Thanks, Gordon. Appreciate it.